and welcome to the fourth episode of the Atro Talk podcast, a podcast run by the EIS Young Fellows. My name is Maria Giovanna Lupo, and I'm representing the Department of Medicine, University of Padua, Italy, and I will be your host for today's episode. In this series of interviews with experts, we are joined today by Professor Alexander Bartelt from Munich at the European Lipoprotein Club meeting in Tutzing, Germany.
So, Professor Bartelt is a principal investigator in the field of cardiovascular metabolism at the Ludwig-Maximilians-University, Munich, and the head of a junior research group at the German Center for Cardiovascular Research. His research is dedicated to elucidating the fundamental molecular mechanism underlying cellular stress in the metabolic syndrome, and his contribution to the understanding of metabolism have been recognized through national and international awards, including an ERC starting grant in 2019. So, hi, Professor Bartelt. On behalf of the EIS, I would like to thank you for accepting our invitation and for allowing us to record this podcast series here at this amazing meeting. In this interview, we want our listeners to get to know more about you and your research. So, could you please briefly introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. It's really a pleasure to be here and talk a little bit about myself. That's something that I like to do a lot, obviously. So that's going to be fun. I'm associate professor now at the LMU. I'm a biochemist by training, and I lead an international interdisciplinary group of researchers that come from all over the world and are very dedicated to basic research. Different backgrounds, biochemists, physicists, MDs, and this is really something that helps me move forward. And I think also is something that you see here at the meeting, that bringing people together is a lot of fun. And I think for me as a professor, this is a very important thing.
So do you think it's very important to have an interdisciplinary lab?
Absolutely. I think diverse people have diverse thoughts, and especially in science, if you spice it up and mix it up, this will generate new ideas.
Yes, I agree. So before asking you academic-related questions, we would like to ask you some personal questions so that our listeners can get to know you better. Could you describe us what a typical day in your life looks like? So how do you spend your free time? Do you have some specific hobbies that you want to share?
Yeah, I think it's perhaps not a secret, but I usually start the day with watching the movie The Big Lebowski. And I like to do yoga while I watch the movie. And there are two things why I think this is good for me. And one thing is that The Big Lebowski is a very funny movie and helps me forget about the big burden of the day that's about to come. And plus also having a desk job, is not so great for your physical health. And I feel like the yoga is really helping me to stay, relatively healthy in many ways.
Okay, so you used to relax before work.
And then most of the day, I think then is, of course, somewhat dedicated to the job. But I like to do the thinking and the writing in the morning before lunch. I'm not a breakfast person. I like an early lunch. And then I usually have meetings in the afternoon, which you can even survive if you're a little tired and don't listen a lot. So then that's usually what the day looks like. And sometimes there are meetings, seminars. From a professional standpoint, of course, also a lot of journeys that take me somewhere to a scientific meeting or so. And these are essentially the biggest parts.
Yeah, so you use yoga also to relax and to find the right balance between work and personal life. That's great. And what do you aim to achieve personally in the next few years?
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. I think I'm very happy every time I go to the lab. The people put a smile on my face. I'm happy to see them grow, and I'm a little sad when I see them leave and spread their wings to new things. So that to me is definitely the personal success that I can see every day. I'll be changing jobs soon, and then I'll be full professor and chair. So on an academic level, there's not much more I can actually achieve, except for maybe winning the Anichkov Prize, maybe one day the Nobel Prize, or become EU president or something like that. So, and because these are not really goals one should have, I think a goal is just to enjoy whatever you do.
Yes, I agree. I perfectly agree. So let's move on your academic experience. Could you tell us more about your academic journey and what have you studied? You told us that you are a biochemist. Okay, so you can tell us more?
Sure. I mean, I always loved science in a way. I loved the shows for children where they explain how the world works, how machine works, the beauty of nature. And it was very clear to me that this is something that I find interesting. And that's also why in high school I had all the biology and chemistry classes, and somewhat, I think it's great that I studied biochemistry, but I would still recommend anyone to study rather medicine, human medicine, because I could be in the very same job I am now. But nevertheless, the biochemistry was very challenging and interesting course. And I think I really never had any doubts that I wanted to do a PhD afterwards. Which I did also in the area of lipidology. So my diploma thesis was actually on the effect of insulin and insulin resistance on apolipoproteins and hepatocytes. Very interesting, very descriptive in a way, but for me definitely was an opportunity to run many Western blots. And then I think one critical turning point in my career was I'm a very lazy person, I have to say. And I always was afraid to, maybe go where no one has gone before, and maybe do something new, get out of my comfort zone. But I think a turning point was to realize that without leaving my comfort zone, I would probably not make any progress.
So you decided to go to Boston?
And that's when I decided just to leave everything behind, everything I had achieved to that point, and try something new, and go to the US and pursue a postdoc, which, I think was the biggest project that I ever started and conducted. Yeah. And having done that, obviously, you also understand better how it is for people to come, for example, then to our lab from abroad, what they have to go through, all the admin and the cultural differences. So that was very insightful. And after my postdoc, then I was very lucky to be supported by great mentors that believed in my abilities. And it turned out there was a position at the LMU Institute for Cardiovascular Prevention. And I was lucky enough to get it and also get some grants. And then from that point on, established a lab.
Okay. And how many years do you spend in USA?
4.5 years.
4.5 years. So, and you warmly suggest people, researchers, to go abroad to change their mind.
I think, this international experience is definitely something I can only recommend. Mm-hmm. It might not be required. And I know many people that may have not left the country and did not research abroad and still were successful. But still, I believe that, especially in the US, where everyone is a stranger in a way, so that's very special. And the research culture in the US is also very open, very critical in many ways, very different to what I had experienced before in Germany. So to me, this was really a very enriching and enlightening experience, and I can only recommend it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. And what was the most challenging project you've worked on, and how did you overcome the obstacles to achieve your goals?
I think the most difficult phase of my career was the transition from postdoc to principal investigator.
Okay.
And the reason for that is usually there are two mechanisms by which you achieve this transition. And the challenge lies within that there are a lot more postdocs than usually open positions for assistant professors, group leaders, or whatnot. And then after leaving the US, my paper from the postdoc was not yet published. And without the proper publication, it's difficult to get grants that will support junior leaders like myself. I can maybe say that now. Like the ERC and things like that. So it's very difficult to get those. And on the other hand, if there's a position at the university, you might need to have a mentor that really wants you for that position. So I really had neither of those two things. So it was, I was hanging a little bit in the air. And at that point in time, I had a lot of support by my postdoc mentor, who, enabled me by keeping me a little bit longer on the payroll and supporting me with lots of letters of recommendation, really helped me to transition then in the end from being a postdoc to a PI.
To a PI. Okay. And what has been the most rewarding part of your work?
Like I mentioned in the beginning, what is really rewarding is to see the success of other people. And
the people that you mentor.
People in our lab, and also sometimes even see students, summer students that only come for a little while and then see how they blossom in the end, how they get excited. You see the science, the interest in their eyes, and then when you see that you really contributed and they benefit from the work you have put into this, that's really a great thing to see. And of course, also there are these formal closures of people in the lab, like when they defend their PhD or when papers are published. These are really, really important milestones. And just seeing how happy people are after all their hard work, then I feel my contribution was probably worth something.
Yes, it's really rewarding. Yes,
and that is always something that keeps me going.
Okay, and which are the current research areas in your lab?
I think I have always a problem with this branding because, like my postdoc mentor said, my appetite for science is too big. So that means we follow the science where it leads. And this sometimes leads us in areas where we've never been, where we are not really experts, but then we try to understand what we have found by hard experimentation, hard work. But most of the projects are obviously in the context of metabolism, metabolic disease, obesity, cardiovascular disorders. But regardless, we're not so translationally clinical focused. Of course, we don't want to forget about the patient, but in the end, we want to understand the basic biology, like how do the cells work? How do these molecules interact? Because only with the strong mechanistic insight into these areas, you can actually understand also pathologies of diseases and perhaps also develop therapeutics.
Okay, thank you so much. In this interview series, we have one part which is dedicated to failures. So have you ever failed during your academic career?
Well, of course, you might think it's difficult for me to find that, but I can tell you my PhD project, I mean, that was really nothing. And it also goes a long way in understanding that at some point when you fail in a project and the project is going anywhere, that you accept this failure and maybe move on. And I think it's important to understand and learn during your career when you have failed, or when it's actually worth to keep going. So the project that I had in my PhD, it was not really successful. And at some point then me and my mentor decided it might be good maybe to change direction a little bit. And that was very helpful in the end. So the thesis and my PhD in the end, of course, were successful. But the project that we started, I mean, that really didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, so the take-home message is that you have to fail to have success.
Sometimes, yes.
Sometimes, yes.
Failure is the greatest teacher.
Yes.
And that is something that not only Master Yoda says, I also say it all the time.
Okay, so besides all your publications, you have also published a book in German. How we have to pronounce it?
Der Fettversteher.
Okay, that means the fat expert.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, and could you tell us a little bit about more of this book, and if it's also available in English or in other languages?
Yeah, unfortunately, so the book has not been such a great success that it has been yet translated. I still need to find a publisher in the English book market that would like to translate and sell it. But I haven't given up. I think the book is very useful in many ways because for many years when I go to a party, a family event, my relatives or friends, they would ask me, so Alex, what are you working on? And then, of course, I practiced in many, many years. How can I describe my very difficult science to my grandma, for example? And I think now that I have written this book, I can just say, go read my book. And that is really an interesting project that also was a lot of effort because for many years I was trained to be very crisp and precise in what I say. And then all of a sudden you have to tell like lengthy stories and need to fill a lot of pages of manuscript with entertaining writing, right? So that's more prosaic. The entertainment is in the focus, and it's not really so much about the facts and the figures that we usually have to put into our writing. So it was kind of an effort to go back to what I had actually learned in high school, to really work, like really write novels and stories. And in the end, it worked out. And now I can also, when I interview people, I can simply say, did you read my book? And then I know if they say yes, then probably it's a good candidate. Well, I'm joking, but obviously it's also nice that sometimes when I have interns in the lab, high school students that come, I always give them the book so they can read a little bit more about the things that we do.
Okay, so we are waiting for the English version.
Yes. It'll probably be the Fat Expert Strikes Back.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the next question that regards the social media, because you and your lab are very active on X, on LinkedIn. And what do you think is the best way to disseminate recent scientific knowledge or to promote your work to a wider public, also not a research-related public?
I mean, there's always a fine line, and the same is also true for the lay science book that we just talked about. There's always a fine line between being too simplistic in what you explain, because the reality is not simple, and making it too complicated. And then, of course, social media, in many cases, only allows you to be very short and crisp in the messages that you can convey. So, for example, I don't think there should be really any dietary recommendation or medical practices that should be disseminated through X, Insta, or other sources. But for example, if we want to alert the scientific community that we do have a new preprint, a new paper, something happened that we just want to share, I think these platforms are great to disseminate these incidents and also make people aware, disseminate the knowledge. But they would still need to go back, obviously, to go to the papers and read about it. I use X a lot for reading about other people's work and in the way that I'm being alerted to what is probably new and hot. And in the end, then I would download those papers or potentially read the preprints even. And I think this community is very dynamic and helps us to be on top of everything rather than going through PubMed with our search terms or ask ChatGPT to put together the best papers of the last 10 days.
Yes. So now we are at the ELC meeting. And can you tell us more about this event that happens once a year? You are the president of the ELC now.
I think it's rather the chairperson.
Chairperson, yes.
I mean, this is a meeting with a lot of tradition. It's the 47th edition, and it was actually founded by a group of scientists that were very active in the lipoprotein field. And in their honor and in their spirit, this meeting has been always then continued by renewing generations of lipid researchers. And I myself, before I became elected before I was elected to the organizing committee and then was elected the chairperson, I attended the meeting as a regular junior PhD student. And I gave terrible talks, I'm sure.
Me too.
But over the years, this community has been great. I have now many friends here, many collaborations that have been established. And the spirit of the meeting is also unique in a way because all the people that are here have to present their work.
Yes.
either through a poster or through a presentation. And we, as the organizing committee, we select the participants based on the scientific quality of their abstract. So in the end, these 2.5 days, they might be very intense, but they're also very enriching for every single participant. So it's not like you go to a meeting, you see 5 major talks from leaders in the field, and that's it. But here you really are part of the meeting, part of the club.
Yes, it's a very big family, actually.
Yes, and we hope to keep it alive and expanding. And I'm also very happy that we are able to invite EAS young fellows to this meeting and that we're having this podcast.
Yes. Okay, so thank you, Professor Bartelt. And let's move on the expert opinion section of this podcast series. And what do you think is the hot topic in the field of atherosclerosis at the moment? And which topics do you think are overlooked in this research field?
To me personally, I think lipoprotein little a is an area where we still have no answers to why this is a risk factor for atherosclerosis. It's a fundamental component of lipoprotein metabolism, but it seems to be extremely tricky to unravel its molecular secrets. So I think if we understood this molecule better, it might potentially also give us better ideas how to treat people with high lipoprotein little a better. So I see also there's therapeutic impact, and also from a biochemistry, molecular biology standpoint, it's an extremely interesting protein. So I think we should really invest more research into that, maybe study less of the cholesterol metabolism per se, because we have pretty much figured that out a lot. If I were to choose what I could do and find me some good new students, I think I would go for that.
Yeah. There is a clinical trial that is studying an antisense oligonucleotide against Lp(a), so it's a very hot topic nowadays. And so you are highly involved in ferroptosis research. And we would like to ask you why you think several other scientists do not believe that this is a separate form of cell death.
Yeah, that is a good question. I mean, the problem with that is that for most modalities of cell death, you have clear executioners. But here we don't have executioners, we only have protectors. So it's kind of like you take the protectors away and then this happens. But you can't really, unlike other cell death modalities, activate it in a more of a systemic or with a switch. So what is ferroptosis? I think still people don't really appreciate, because in the end, this is something that has been looked at in cellular systems, but clearly also exists in organisms and humans. And then how we define ferroptosis is that whatever we look at, whatever effect goes away if we give an anti-lipid ROS molecule like ferrostatin, liproxtatin, even maybe vitamin E. If we add those and the effect goes away, it must be ferroptosis. But this is a very artificial thinking in that sense, because obviously there are probably many ferroptotic events every second in our body, but we have so many good protectors that do not let the ferroptosis actually take place and happen. So it might be just by chance that this mechanism has developed. It doesn't really have we don't really have a good understanding of its role in biology. But clearly, it seems that cancer cells have evolved past these points, or we can use sensibilities in the lipid ROS execution of cell death to potentially target cancers or help neurodegeneration and stuff like that.
Okay, so thank you so much for your expert opinion. And just a very quick question. Do you have any open positions in your lab? PhD positions, postdoc positions?
We never have open calls for students or postdocs. I never post them, but you're very welcome to apply. And if you are a worthy candidate, we will make it work.
Okay. Thank you so much. And let's move into conclusion. I want to thank you, Professor Bartelt, for sharing your time and insights with us. And it was a very such incredible interview. And I also want to thank all our listeners. And this podcast is for you, and we need your feedback to tailor it into your interests. So please leave us a comment or a suggestion. And again, thank you so much for your time, and stay tuned for the upcoming episodes.
My pleasure. Thank you, listeners.